Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here. This presentation is titled Globalization and the Erosion of Belize's Culinary Ecologies. It's an exploration of how globalization and industrial civilization have reshaped the ways Belizeans grow, prepare, and think about food, and how those changes affect our cultural identity, ecology, and sovereignty. This is not new knowledge, but rather knowledge we've stopped valuing, the kind that connects food to the survival and story of civilization itself. This work was developed by Dr. Randy Marfield and myself, Miss Abby Godoy Guillen. Dr. Marfield holds a PhD in rhetoric, writing, and professional communication, with research focusing on how language and power intersect in post colonial societies. I hold an MPhil in social and cultural anthropology, with research centered on globalization, culture, and social identity. Together, our purpose is to examine how globalization continues to shape Belize's culinary identity, and to ask what happens when local food ecologies are absorbed by global systems of power and consumption. We begin by acknowledging that none of this is new. The connection between agriculture and civilization has been studied for centuries, to the point that it can be conveniently ignored. As globalization intensifies, resources move from rural to urban, from local to global. These shifts reveal how civilizations evolve and how they begin to forget the sources of their sustenance. As Richard Proctor wrote in 1882 in The Influence of Food and Civilization, those who depend on agriculture and pasture find early that there are laws on which their well being depends. This was a recognition that human well being is bound by the natural world. But over time, civilization adopted a new attitude, one where nature was no longer a guide, but a servant. That very psychology, nature made to serve man, is one we as Belizeans have inherited and normalized in our modern lifestyles. Industrial civilization, as Derek Jensen writes in Endgame, is killing the planet. He says, and I quote, "It should be clear to everyone by now, even to those with a vested interest in ignorance, that industrial civilization is killing the planet and causing unprecedented human privation and suffering. For countries like Belize, Jensen warns that we are most likely to collapse under the weight of our own ecological and human destructiveness. Our inherited systems, economic, agricultural, and cultural, mirror this industrial mindset. What we often call modern progress is, in truth, a pattern of ecological and cultural erosion. The question becomes, how do these inherited practices threaten small nations like ours? Food as a reflection of civilization and culinary expression and cultural power. Food is a mirror. It reflects who we are, what we value, and how we live. Lewis Mumford in 1961 observed that as any civilization advances in its culinary and musical art, it also succumbs to this division of labor that characterizes its power structure. He writes that in such moments, we find the mirror image of civilization's other face, that of power. In the modern context, food has become a shallow representation of cultural sophistication. Think of Big Macs, Coca Cola, Subway, global icons of capitalism. And here in Belize, our beloved rice and beans, boil up, and orange walk tacos are increasingly absorbed into a smaller, local version of the same capitalist system. They are no longer only symbols of home, they are commodities sold and branded for consumption. So we must ask, if food tells a story, whose story are we really telling now? There was a time when food marked ethnic and cultural identity. Today, food marks market value. Post-colonial thinkers like Gugi wa Thiong'o and Frantz Fanon have long advocated for returning to traditional cultivation as a form of liberation. They remind us that as colonized peoples rely on industrial food systems, they adopt not only new diets, but also the ideologies of their colonizers. William Catton Jr. captures this perfectly when he says, "The fight to remain economically relevant will be more important than the need to be ideologically aware." In our time, the struggle to stay globally competitive often replaces the need to stay culturally rooted. The outcome? globalized diets that blur distinctions, and communities that forget what once made their food and their identity unique. Food has long been used as a weapon, a tool for domination and control. We see this in three powerful examples: Gaza, where food scarcity is used as a war tactic; North America, where settlers destroyed indigenous food systems to force displacement; Africa, where colonial powers replaced native crops with export oriented agriculture. Across all three, one truth remains: controlling food means controlling people. It weakens resistance, erodes identity, and builds dependency, turning sustenance into strategy. In Gaza, over 500,000 people currently face catastrophic hunger. According to Professor Greg Kennedy of King's College London, reducing access to food is being used as a weapon. Starvation dismantles morale and physical strength. It destroys communities from within. This strategy mirrors the blockades of world wars, where food scarcity was used to break the will of populations. Food insecurity here is not an accident, it is a deliberate weapon used to control and subdue through hunger. Food as a weapon is also a part of America's own colonial history. In 1791, President George Washington ordered his forces to destroy the farms of the Wea tribe in the Ohio River Valley. Rich land long cultivated for corn, beans, squash, and fruit. Crops were burned, orchards chopped down, and villages reduced to ash. Alcohol was later introduced to manipulate and disorient communities into giving up their land. As historian Rosalind Lapierre notes, the goal was simple: destroy food systems, destroy sovereignty, and the result was displacement, dependency, and the creation of harmful stereotypes. This pattern of controlling people by dismantling their food ecology is one we can still trace today, even in Belize's resilience on imported food systems. Colonizers in Africa used a different method, replacing local crops with cash crops for export. Traditional foods that sustained communities for generations were replaced by crops that served empire, not the people. As Rashki and Chima write, colonization and neocolonization led to the systemic expatriation of indigenous and traditional food habits. This nutrition transition from traditional diets to Western ones has caused a widespread food dependency and health crises. This shift from local to global diets represents not progress, but a continuation of colonial control through economics and appetite. Colonial food patterns persist hidden beneath the language of modernization and growth. Food is not only sustenance, it's a form of sovereignty. Traditional dishes such as hudut, rice and beans, and escabeche are now integral to Belize's tourism image, but as they are promoted for global marketing, they risk losing their roots as cultural practice and becoming products of performance. The romantic imagery of local authenticity mirrors the old colonial narrative, the noble native, eager to please, eager to serve. As a result, culinary culture becomes centralized, controlled, and commodified. Food becomes a soft form of imperial control, a means of economic dependence wrapped in nostalgia and cultural pride. Tourism in Belize continues to reproduce these colonial patterns. It creates opportunity, yes, but also dependency. Local foods are prepared and presented not for community sustenance, but for the foreign gaze to be photographed, rated, and consumed. Culinary presentation becomes performance, an exchange where culture is the product and foreign currency the reward. Authenticity becomes a brand. We must therefore ask uncomfortable questions. Does our economic reliance on tourism amount to submission? And when food becomes a marketing instrument, does it still belong to the people who created it? To reclaim our food systems is to reclaim our autonomy. Belize now stands between two paths: global inclusion or local preservation. Reviving traditional foodways, supporting local farmers, markets, and ingredients strengthens not only our economy, but also our cultural resilience. True sovereignty begins with food: how we grow it, share it, and define it. To eat locally must mean more than consuming Belizean ingredients. It must mean living consciously and sustainably in harmony with our land and culture. Food is both a mirror and measure of civilization. Globalization has turned nourishment into commodity and culture into commerce. Belize now faces a defining choice. Will we follow the global model of exploitation, or will we reclaim food as culture, identity, and survival? As Richard Proctor once wrote, nature may be made the servant of man, but perhaps it is time we reverse that order and let nature become once again our greatest teacher. These are our references and a disclaimer. We do not own the rights to the photos used in this presentation. All images are used for educational, non-commercial purposes only. Thank you so much for your attention, and thank you so much to the organizers of the Culture Symposium for giving us this platform to present our ideas and thoughts. If you have any questions, we will be happy to answer them.